Hello everyone. Today I'm going to do a quick tutorial on the Mr. Mute tool that's available on Amazon, and what this does is allow you to play an ocarina with normal breath pressures, but instead of activating your normal notes, instead you're activating your overtones. So here's what, for example, like A sounds like on this vocal link. But then if I put the mute on there, here's what it sounds like with the overtone version. So it sounds like a whistle sound, but it's in key, and that's kind of the whole point of all this, is that overtones are like a whistle sound, but they're in key. They're not flat, or they're not like totally off, and you can play music in practice and learn how to control your breath through it. The problem with overtones is that they're generally kind of hard to activate without the mute, especially on the low notes. So if you want to activate like the overtone of C, it's really hard because it takes such tiny amount of breath, and then it takes like the perfect amount of breath too. If you blow just slightly too hard, it won't work, or if you too softly. So the window to activate the overtone is tiny, and so that's what also this tool helps with. So it comes with these pages, but they don't really tell you how each piece works, so it makes it kind of difficult to set things up. They do give you kind of a setting table, which helps kind of see what the logic is for the pieces. But I'll just kind of explain it, because I've kind of tried to figure it out, and obviously if you know more, leave a comment. But anyway, so there's a couple pieces to the kit. You have your mouthpiece, your body, your adapter, and your inserts. So I'll start with the mouthpiece. The mouthpiece is relative to the volume of air in the chamber. So if you have a large ocarina, you want to use larger mouthpieces. If you have a small ocarina, you want to use smaller mouthpieces. Now they also have these options, this option package. I don't know where you can find it. I don't see it for sale anywhere. But anyway, the blue and the red tend to be for altos and sopranos, which is good enough. So generally, if you're practicing with alto, you'll be using the blue, and or just a larger ocarina. Maybe you have a big soprano, you would also want to use a blue. So like I said, it's relative to the overall size, because it controls the overall volume of air entering the entire thing. So the next area is the inserts, and so you can see they go from smallest to largest. So the way inserts work is they favor certain areas of the range. They block off air, but they favor certain areas. So if you have the green one on, you'll be able to play like low C realistically, like similar to the breath it would normally take to blow low C. You'll be able to do that and still hit C, but you'll find that your high notes are hard to hit or impossible to hit. And then the opposite is true with the white. The white, you might be able to hit your high notes very easily, but your low notes might take like the tiniest amount of breath pressure to do, and that's kind of like defeats the whole point. The whole point is to try to have a realistic breath pressure when you're playing all your notes. So that's where the vent on the main body comes into play, and that's sort of what makes this all work. So the way the vent works, it does many different things. The inserts act like a bracket on your range. They just move up and down your range. They block off notes, but they open up other notes. But the vent is sort of like a range expander or contractor. The more you open the vents, it'll actually like widen the range that you can hit, and it's because changing the air. It's venting air and causing it to do nothing. And so what that does is actually it's reducing your breath pressure range, and by doing so, it's increasing your note range. So also, it's opening the window to hit overtones. So I'll just give a quick example. So if I have a wide open vent or a pretty open vent, and then I have a smaller insert on, that or no insert, the notes will not be so hard to hit. They'll have a sort of wider accepted range, so that low C will now take certain different levels of breath pressure instead of a very specific one, because it's venting air. So by venting air, it's making you have to blow harder, and by doing so, it's not responding as sharply as it would. So it will expand the window, and that's very important and useful to know. Obviously, venting more will make the breath pressure required harder. So how to set these up? You generally want to run as large of a vent as you can with as large of an insert as you can, so that way you can still hit high notes while emulating the right breath pressure. So generally I start with a pink or a red. The white one never seems to work. It just makes the low notes way too hard to hit. So you start with the pink and then start trying to hit a middle range note or a middle range key, because those seem to be the easiest to activate, and you just want to see if it works at all. So try to hit like G or A or something and see if you're able to hit that overtone whistle. Then work your way up, see if you can hit the high notes. Then you work your way down, see if you can hit the very lowest note. And if the lowest note, which will more than likely happen, C will be just too hard to hit. It'll take like no breath pressure, and you can try opening the vent more to make it harder to blow, but it will still be too easy, or it'll require too little breath. So then what you do is you go down on the insert. So it's sort of like a gear shift on a bike. Once you are opening your vent so much, then you know it's time to go down to a different insert. Or if you're closing your vent all the way to hit high notes, then you need to go up on the insert. So try to have your vent as open as possible, somewhere around the third notch. Maybe not fully open, but slightly, like 3/4 open or halfway open. And you want that window to be as wide as possible to hit the overtone. So as you work your way down, eventually C will feel more natural. So you'll have your C will be realistically difficult to hit. You won't be using a tiny amount of breath. You'll actually be using a normal amount of breath that you would normally do to hit C. So once you can hit C and it feels good, then try to hit your highest note. And if your highest note is still out of range, then try closing the vent just a tad, and what that will do is it might bring your high notes into range, but then C will once again be hard to hit because you're reducing the venting amount, you're closing the window, you're making less air vent, which means less breath pressure is required. So once you'll end up winding up somewhere in the middle where you're using like a red or orange or maybe a yellow. And once that C feels good and your highest note feels good also, then you're good to go. Now, your highest notes will generally sound really airy, but that's okay. The point is to have the right key, the right sounds coming out with the right breath pressure. You're not trying to make the perfect sound with this. You're trying to to have realistic breath pressure that's activating overtones, and a little airiness isn't a big deal. So just remember, if you have like an ocarina with a rounded mouthpiece, it might not work well. If with this adapter it'll slide off. If you have a thick mouthpiece, it might stretch it a little, so keep that in mind, or just set it up only on one ocarina, and it'll work great for you. Anyway, if you have any advice or any tips, any questions, put them down below, and I'll be sure to answer them. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.